Joyful we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, opening to the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark clouds down away. Giver of immortal gladness,
didn't feel like being joyful today, but my hope is that in Him, in His presence, you will find joy and that you will open your heart to what He wants to do. You see me, you see my inmost parts, your eyes are open, your eyes are open. You hear me, you hear my inward thoughts, your eyes are open, your ears are open, so here I am, waiting on you. My heart is open, here I am, worshiping you. Arms wide open, I'm open. I am open, I am open. Speaking, you speak to my spirit. Your mouth is open, your mouth is open. You give me only good gifts. Your hands are open, I know. Your hands are open, so here I am, waiting on you. My heart is open, yes, here I am, worshiping you. Arms wide open, here I am, yes, here I am, waiting on you. My heart is open, oh yes, here I am, worshiping you. Arms wide open, I am, oh, I am open, I am open, I'm open. Yes, I am open, I am open. So unlock my doors and sweep through these doors and make me your home. To you I am open, forever the switch. Now light me up, Spirit, make me your home. To you I am open, I am open, I am open. Yes, I am open, I am open. Here I am. So here I am, waiting on you. My heart is open, yes, here I am, worshiping you. With arms wide open, come and fill this house with glory. Keep filling this house with stories as we are being changed. Come and fill this house. Come and fill this house with glory. Keep filling this house with stories as we are living praise. Again. Come and fill this house with glory. Keep filling this house with stories as we are please feel free to take a seat for a moment. Each week we love to share the stories that God is filling this house with, of what He's doing in people's lives. And over the next few weeks and months, we're going to be pulling those stories specifically from some of the ministries that we have within this church. And that's for, I would say, 3 purposes. One, we want you to know what's going on so that you can pray better for the needs of this church. You can pray better for the areas that we have at work. 2, it's so that you know what's available to you to serve you. Sometimes there are things available that can be a blessing to people, but then they don't know it's there, so they don't ask for that help. So we're trying to let you know these are some of the ways that you can seek help within this church. And 3rd, it's so that you can know where there are availabilities for you to help out. Because this isn't about just the people who are up on the stage doing the work, or the people who are the leaders in the ministries, but we love to get people involved where God is gifting them. So this is letting you know a bit of what's going on in these various areas, so you can see where you might jump in. So this morning, we have the lovely Christine Lunders to come up and share a little bit about the care team and that story of what God's doing.
Good morning, church. My name is Christine Lunders. I am from the Netherlands, and like Matt already shared today, I'd like to share a bit about a new ministry in this church, the care team. Like Matt already said, in the upcoming weeks, all the various ministries in this church are going to share a God story. So today we have the privilege to introduce ourselves to you. And I'd like to share briefly what we do, who we are, and roughly how we work, so that you have a clue of what all that entails. First of all, what is the care team? As Christians, we're not exempt from suffering. We go through trials in this life and through hardships, and like I said, like through suffering. It can take many forms that can affect our emotional health, our mental health. It could be things like depression or anxiety or psychosis. It could be various forms of abuse. It could be addictions. It could also be other life issues and less heavy-duty things, so to speak. Something that greatly affected me in life is that I grew up with a father who had a personality disorder. For those of you that don't know what that is, that means that someone has very rigid and difficult behavior. So it wasn't easy growing up. But I can tell you that God was right there in the midst of it. And that is something that we as the care team want to share with the church. God is there in the middle of your suffering. And He cares about you. And Jesus, once again, is our example. He came down to this earth and He came to live in our messes. And we believe that God isn't absent in our struggles. So as a care team, we want to be a support to people who are vulnerable in this way, and especially where it relates to your faith and your relationship with God. We'll probably not have all the answers, but we will listen to you, we'll talk to you, we'll pray with you, and perhaps have some good advice for you. Some people will have to refer to professionals, because we ourselves are not mental health care professionals, neither do we want to pretend to be that. So sometimes that will be necessary. But all of us on the care team have some experience in our past that we would love to use to serve the church as a whole, to be healthy on all levels, to be mentally healthy, spiritually healthy, physically healthy, emotionally healthy. So that's our aim. As a care team, we've started a pilot these past few months, so some of you might have heard of us already, and I'd like to just briefly share with you an experience that I personally had doing that. I had a conversation with a person who was struggling with a mental health illness, and because we keep everything in the care team confidential, I won't share any other details of this person's story, except for something that this person told me. And this person said, "I'm so happy that I have a place to talk about these things. Like with you, I don't feel like I have to keep up pretenses." And that is really what we'd love to see in this church, that you don't have to hide or be ashamed. You can come out in the open, you can come talk to us in a place where it's safe and confidential. I would like to ask all the members of the care team who are present today to come up and briefly introduce ourselves. So on this side we have Nicolette Smink, who currently serves as a servant leader at this church. She also studied medicine. Then we have Patrick Rutgers, who has experience through doing pastoral care course through Koinonia. Then we have Becky Miller, who also currently serves on staff at Damascus Road, who has experience counseling victims of abuse and who is also in seminary currently. Someone who's not here today is Luke Meijer. Luke Meijer has been to Bible school. He also did a pastoral training course. He has done training in life coaching, and he also does relationship counseling. And then there's myself. I also, like Nicolette, studied medicine, and I have experience working as a general practitioner. So that's the pastoral care team. I would like to end with briefly sharing a bit about how we work. We would love for everyone in this church to be involved in a Bible study group. Hopefully that's become clear over the past few weeks that we love Bible study and we love community. And we would love for everyone to be involved in a small group in this way. If you're going through a tough time in life for whatever reason, you could first then address your Bible study leader. You could talk to that person. And all the Bible study leaders have received training on then how to have a conversation with you. Then your Bible study leader might refer you to the care team, depending on what the issue is. And the way we work is as follows. We'll meet with you for approximately 3 to 4 times. We start with an intake question where we try to discern what your question for help is, and we try to get to know you. And then in the follow-up sessions, we'll address that, so the question for help. I'd like to end with this. During the prayer time, all of us here will be available to pray with you in the lobby. And if anyone has any emotional or mental health concern that you'd like to either talk about or pray with us about, we're available. And also for those of you that might be interested in joining our team, please feel free to address any of us that are standing up here today. Thank you. I'd like to ask Kat to come up now to read the first Bible reading. Thank you.
Good morning, church. My name is Kat, and I will be doing the Bible readings today. The first one up is from the Gospel according to Luke, chapter 4, verses 24 to 29. He said, "I assure you that no prophet is welcome in the prophet's hometown. And I can assure you that there were many widows in Israel during Elijah's time, when it didn't rain for 3.5 years, and there was a great food shortage in the land. Yet Elijah was sent to none of them, but only to a widow in the city of Zarephath, in the region of Sidon. There were also many persons with skin diseases in Israel during the time of the prophet Elijah, but none of them were cleansed. Instead, Naaman the Syrian was cleansed. When they heard this, everyone in the synagogue was filled with anger. They rose up and ran him out of town. They led him to the crest of the hill on which their town had been built, so that they could throw him off the cliff. But he passed through the crowd and went on his way.
But it can be really important to just look at what's important to happen today. What's important to happen in the moment that we're in our lives. And that also has to do with what's important to happen here on a Sunday morning when we meet together as a family, as a body together. What is important to happen? So today will be a little different. Instead of one long sermon, it's going to be split up over several parts. We want to get to what is basic. I was speaking with Sky this week. She is an accomplished artist who has studied art very well, knows a lot of what she's doing with that. She's also the one who's made the slides today. These are not the ones she's most proud of, but she's actually really good with art, no matter what you think about the slides. But as we talked, she said, the most hated class I had was an intro to art, because the teacher almost put all of it about perspective. So for 3 hours, she would just throw white paper shapes on the ground, and we had to draw in perspective from where we were sitting. So what's one? We do that, and then the next one, and the next one. For 3 hours, each class, for multiple classes. She said, I hated it. But it was really, really good for me, and it helped me become a better artist, but I hated it. My hope is that you don't hate Sunday mornings. But if it sounds like sometimes I'm a bit of a broken record, it's because I think that us having the basics of what it is to be like Jesus is that important and will help us to better live out the life that he's called us to live. And perspective is incredibly important. Now, some people prefer abstract art or modern art that doesn't follow some of these rules of perspective, and I respect that. However, the people who are seen as the geniuses who've broken out of the rules were normally classically trained and knew the rules pretty well and could do that, and so they knew which rules they were breaking and why and when they were doing it. I would say that can be the same with what we do in our faith. Some people are like, well, I don't play inside the rules, and you can point to Jesus, and Jesus was someone who didn't play inside of the religious rules of his time. But it wasn't because Jesus was ignorant of them. He knew quite well what was expected from God and from the law, and he knew what people had interpreted that as, and when he broke their rules, he knew why he was doing it and when he was doing it. So if you're a rule breaker, and like, I don't need basics. Actually, basics are really helpful, even for people like you. So, one of our basics, the motto, if you'd say it along with me, is, we the church, as followers of Jesus, will love as Jesus loved, teach what Jesus taught, and obey as Jesus obeyed. And yes, in all of these, Jesus continues to love, Jesus continues to teach us, and Jesus continues to be in obedience to his Father. We just use the past tense because that's what's in the Bible easier. So we'll look at what Jesus did or encouraged in settings like this. Jesus didn't go to a church building, and it's not a one-for-one comparison. So 3 just quick things to be clear. Sunday is not the new Saturday. Now, if we look at the Old Testament idea of Sabbath that is also mentioned in the New Testament, Sunday is not a one-for-one comparison of that. There are reasons why, but I'm not saying that's what it is, but we can use that as an example. Second, church buildings, whether that's a nice cathedral or the MECC, are not the new temple that we have in the Old Testament. We're told that the temple is his people. It's us. It's us as individuals. It's us as a community. And the third is that our Sunday church services are not the new synagogue of what they had at their time. There are, for various reasons, these are imperfect comparisons, but I'll use them today because I think there's still important lessons for us to learn about those days and places and times. So on your sheets, if you took one, there are 7 different points that I want to look at that Jesus found to be important, whether that was the Sabbath or in the temple or in the synagogue. The first one is to grow in wisdom. At the beginning of Jesus' life, we have in the biography written by Luke, in Luke chapter 2, Jesus is brought as a baby to the temple. He is circumcised as it was required, and there's 2 people who give these like testimonies, these prophecies over his life. And right after that we're told, and then Jesus grew, and there was wisdom, he grew strong, and he grew in the grace of God. Then right after that, we fast forward to when Jesus is 12, and we're told that his parents take him to the temple again, and he's found asking questions and giving answers to questions of religious leaders at the time. And then we have a sentence afterward that's almost the exact same. And then Jesus went home and he grew in wisdom, and he grew in stature, and he grew in favor with God and man. I like music, if you can't tell. And so if this were a song, then we'd have like the first verse, Jesus goes to temple as a baby. The chorus, grow in wisdom, grow in stature, grow in grace. Second verse, Jesus went to temple as a 12-year-old. And then we go back to the verse again. Grow in wisdom, grow in stature, grow in grace. That song was actually just made up on the spot right now. Not that you have to be proud of that, but this idea that there's obviously this connection. Jesus goes to temple, Jesus grows in wisdom, in stature, and in grace. Now, for some of you, you're done growing in stature. I'm sorry, that's what will happen. But there's still the ability to grow in wisdom and to grow in grace. And those are things that we see in Jesus' life, that as he stayed connected to these times of coming together and these times of giving God attention by going to his holy place, that he continued to grow in wisdom. But it wasn't simply in those times, but we're told those sort of were like the soil so that he could grow after that point when he would leave the temple as well. And we hope to do some of that on Sunday mornings, but that's also why we strongly encourage you to join small groups. So an action step for today is listen to the talk, but also join small groups and follow through, because those are great places to ask questions like Jesus asked, and to respond to questions like Jesus was responding to questions, and maybe to have someone speak a prophecy over you or say things into your life that would be very meaningful. The second one is based off of the Bible reading that we just heard from Kat, that Jesus would challenge prejudices, especially when he was in holy places. He was in the synagogue in his hometown, and as he's starting with this Bible verse that all the people in his town would have loved, Isaiah 61, it's this great verse, and they're like, oh, we love this is going to be a good sermon. But then Jesus starts to say things that he knows challenges their prejudices, and he knows is going to make them angry. And so he talks about foreigners that God has blessed. He talks about a leper that was healed. He talks about a woman who receives this miracle that was from a different area. And these people are now like, what? This was supposed to be one of my favorite sermons about us. And Jesus is making this a sermon about other people. Yeah, that's what Jesus is going to do. And in this time, in this place, I hope you know that it is my intention, very strongly, regularly, to challenge people's prejudices. And that can be in a very sort of ways. With that one, it was a cultural one. But we're also told later by Jesus' brother, he writes in the book of James, that there would be people who would come to the church meetings, and then if they were rich, they're like, oh, here, have the nice seat, this is for you. And if they're poor, like, oh, you can sit at my feet. He says, what's wrong with you people? This is favoritism. This is prejudice that's wrong. Just because someone has more money or less money, that should not affect how we treat them. That should not affect how we greet them and how we pull them into our midst. There are many different ways that we can be prejudiced. Right? It can be based off of so many things. Gender, culture, financial situation, spiritual situation, etc. And Jesus will challenge all of those. So your action step today is I'm going to take about 10 minutes, and I want you to get in small groups, like you with one or two other people, someone that you don't know well. And I want you to ask this single question, or just answer this single question as the three of you in your group. What is one of the hardest things about being you? I always know that it's dangerous when I ask people to start talking, because then you want to keep talking. But because we have some other points that I want to get through, if you would stop those conversations for now. I would love for you to actually keep having those conversations with more and more people as we continue. But next, Kat is going to come up and do our second scripture reading.
Luke chapter 4, 33 to 36. A man in the synagogue had the spirit of an unclean demon. He screamed, "Hey, what have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are. You are the Holy One from God." "Silence," Jesus said, speaking harshly to the demon. "Come out of him." The demon threw the man down before them, then came out of him without harming him. They were all shaken and said to each other, "What kind of word is this? That he can command unclean spirits with authority and power, and they leave." Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. A woman was there who had been disabled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and couldn't stand up straight. When he saw her, Jesus called her to him and said, "Woman, you are set free from your sickness." He placed his hands on her, and she straightened up and at once and praised God. The synagogue leader, incensed that Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, responded, "There are 6 days during which work is permitted. Come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath day." The Lord replied, "Hypocrites, don't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from its stall and lead it out to get a drink? Then isn't it necessary that this woman, a daughter of Abraham, bound by Satan for 18 long years, be set free from her bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said all these things, all his opponents were put to shame. But all those in the crowd rejoiced at the extraordinary things he was doing. Jesus told this parable to certain people who had convinced themselves that they were righteous and who looked on everyone else with disgust. 2 people went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed about himself with these words: God, I thank you that I'm not like everyone else, crooks, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 10% of everything I receive. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He wouldn't even lift his eyes to look toward heaven. Rather, he struck his chest and said, God, show mercy to me, a sinner. I tell you, this person went down to his home justified rather than the Pharisee. All who lift themselves up will be brought low, and those who make themselves low will be lifted up.
We'll do 3 more points now. The first one is, what's important today is to set people free. The first 2 stories that you heard, there's a man who is demon-possessed. He's in the synagogue, and Jesus stops in the middle of it to cast the demon out of this man and set him free from that bondage that he's had of an evil spirit that's been controlling his body. Jesus finds that incredibly important to set people free. Then the second story is not from a spiritual background so much as a physical one, where it's the Sabbath day and a woman who has been diseased for a long time comes up and Jesus heals her. And the religious people at the time said, well, this isn't the day for that. You should do that any other day. And Jesus said, this is the perfect day to set someone free that has been bound. Now, there are bondages in many types of ways, and that's part of why we have the care team to share about that. Is you can have spiritual bondage, but there can be physical bondage or mental or emotional, and there can be all these different types. We see at least those 2 from Jesus, and actually there are several more, even just within the biography that Luke wrote, of Jesus setting people free, especially on what's seen as a holy day. And if it's a good day to set people free on that day, it's a good day to set people free any day, to help them in that process. Once you are set free, one thing that's good to remember is to return and give praise to God. And that's something else that we get to do here as well. One time Jesus heals these 10 lepers, and only one of them comes back, and she says, is there only one of you that came to return and give praise to God for what he's done? So as you get set free in these various areas of your life, give praise to God for that. One action point or encouragement for what you can do from that is this Saturday is the A21 March for Freedom, or Walk for Freedom. I don't remember the exact title. A21, the Walk for Freedom. A21 is a group that works to set people free from physical bondage throughout the world. And some of that has to do with sex slavery, that can be child slavery, that can be child soldiers, that can be the whole realm of slavery that goes on today, because there are more slaves today than there have been in any time of our history of the world. There are more slaves every, I think, 3 minutes. One more person is taken into some form of slavery. And so joining this march isn't going to set everybody free. I totally know that. But it at least helps to raise awareness for it, because that's not just things that happen somewhere on the other side of the world. That's not something that just happens in some of the countries that you've come from, in maybe a developing country or something. That happens here in the Netherlands. There are people in this area who have been sold into sex slavery that police are working to set free often. So to raise awareness for that, to help people know how to spot that, and help raise money for it, as these groups do work to help set people free. And so for the march in Maastricht, I think they want to raise at least 1,000 euros from the whole group that's doing the march here. So that's something that you consider. A way that you can help to set people free is either joining that walk on Saturday or by contributing to that. And you can find information about that online, either on the city or on their Facebook page. A second thing that is good to do today is to honor generosity. One time Jesus is in the temple, and There are all these wealthy people who are bringing and putting in all of their money, and then a poor woman puts in just 2 mites, small currency that she can have. And Jesus points her out to his disciples. And you see that woman, these others, they gave out of their wealth, but she gave out of all that she had. And Jesus honors this woman for her generosity. Some people only give out of their excess. And I think, honestly, a lot of people in this room, myself included, are ones who will do that at times. It's like, oh yeah, well, I can give this money. It's not like it's going to hurt. I'll still be able to eat. I'll still be able to pay my bills. I'll still be able to do this. I'll just give out of my excess. But Jesus is obviously encouraging them to give, and to give not just what they have to, or not to give just an amount to mark off their list, but to truly give generously towards the work that God is doing. And the third thing that's important to do today is ask for God's mercy. As you heard in the last part of that reading, Jesus tells a story of 2 men who go up to the temple, and one of them stands looking up to heaven and saying, God, I'm so glad I'm not this guy. And the other man, who won't even lift his eyes, is just beating his chest and saying, Lord, have mercy on me. Comparison doesn't get us really anywhere with God, because God's curve works totally different than man's curve does. We're like, well, at least I'm doing better than that guy. That happens so much outside of a church, and it happens, honestly, often within churches as well. Well, at least I'm better than that guy. That's not the standard we're called to live up to, is the better than that guy. The standard that we're given is to be like Jesus, which is why I consistently say it, and why other people come up here and talk about is being like Jesus. He is our example. So it's good for us to ask for God's mercy, not comparing ourselves with others. Now we can know with certainty that God wants to give mercy. And that's actually maybe a problem that the second man in Jesus' story had. He's not willing to look up to heaven. He's maybe not even sure that God will give him mercy. But we know that God does love mercy, and he tells us to love mercy as well. He loves to show mercy. He has shown us mercy, especially in the life of Jesus and in the death and resurrection of Jesus. So we can be confident of that. We don't have to doubt. So why are we told to ask for God's mercy if he wants to give it anyway? I would say that this is more for our own honesty than it is for God needing to have someone say, I'm sorry to him. Because as we ask for his mercy, we realize who we are. And we're honest with that. And it also helps in this whole comparison game. When we realize that we're the ones who need mercy, that makes us a little more likely to challenge our own prejudices of the other people who need mercy as well. And receiving God's forgiveness is often tied with giving forgiveness to others as well. Jesus, in what's called the Lord's Prayer, tells us to pray, Lord, forgive me as I forgive other people. That can sometimes sound like a dangerous prayer if you know that you're not being very forgiving. Do you really want God to use that type of mercy to you that you show to others? So us asking God's mercy reminds us of who we are, and it helps us to go against our own lack of mercy towards other people. And so when we're asking God's mercy, an important thing to remember is, how is it between us and others? At one point, Jesus says, if you're going to give your sacrifice in the temple, and you know that someone else has something against you, it's not even you have something against them, but if you know someone else has something against you, you should stop and you should try to make that right. And another time he says, if you stand praying and you have unforgiveness against someone, you need to forgive them. So in asking for God's mercy, it's not just about the mercy I get, but also the mercy that I give. It's both of these. So from these 3 points, to set people free, to honor generosity, and to ask for God's mercy today, I have a couple of action points, and what we'll have in the time coming up. The band will come up and we'll play some more songs, and there are various options that you can choose for you. In your presence, in your presence, in your presence.
presence, oh, in your presence, in your presence, people are set free, and oh, in your presence, in your presence, oh, in your presence, people are set free, chains are broken, lives are changing, people are set free, chains are broken, lives are changing, people are set free, in your presence, in your presence, in your presence, people are set free, in your presence, in your presence, oh, in your presence, people are set free, chains are broken, lives are changing, people are set free, chains are broken, lives are changing, people are set free, I'm free, in your presence, I'm free to worship you, I'm free, in your presence, I'm free to worship you.
Luke 19:45-46. When Jesus entered the temple, he threw out those who were selling the things there. He said to them, "It is written, 'My house will be a house of prayer,' but you have made it a hideout for crooks."
Don't you like those verses that are short and sweet and to the point? In the temple, Jesus goes in and says, "You guys made this about all these other things, but this is supposed to be a house of prayer." That is something that's important for us to do today, is spend time in prayer. Let's ask an honest question. What is your church back home known for? Is it known for being a house of prayer? What is this church known for? If this is your church family, are we known perhaps first and foremost as being a house of prayer? And if not, how can we help to change that? What can or should we do to become that? As this is the second Sunday of the month, we have our prayer meeting after the service as well. One good action step for you to take if you want to get more involved with prayer is join in with more of the prayer opportunities that we have. But prayer is not just what happens when the pastor or other church leaders say, "It's time to pray." It's something that needs to be part of your life day in, day out. It needs to be part of your life wherever you are. And that can be in the place that seems the least spiritual. There's a place where we believe God is available. And you can talk to him. And you can hear his voice. When I read through the stories of Jesus, one of the things that's interesting to me is the times when Jesus hears the voice of God. It's almost never when he's actually inside the temple or the sanctuary. The times where we hear about it is Jesus standing in the Jordan River, and there's a voice from heaven that says, "This is my son, whom I love." Or Jesus standing in front of a tomb, and there's a voice, and Jesus said, that voice was for you guys, not for me, but he's in a graveyard, not in a church building at the time. Or he's standing up on a mountain, It's covered in just the glory of God, and there are these apparitions, it seems, of Moses and Elijah that are there, and God's voice comes. And since it's not a shrine yet, one of the disciples says, oh, maybe we should make a shrine of this place. Jesus hears God's voice out in the world. And may we be people who go and do that as well. But then when we come together, let's spend time in prayer. So, we wanted to do that. Often we'll pray for the needs of people who are in this church or the Thanksgivings that they have. People have filled out some of those cards. So, one Thank God card says, thank you for your protection upon all those who encountered some form of tragedy. Thank God card for the Serve the City Cross the Line dinner last night. It went very well, and the guests and the volunteers were blessed. We had, I don't know the final number, but something like 60 people that were probably there, something like that. An Ask God card for the protection of the leaders of the church and all its ministries. I did not write that, by the way. An Ask God card is for Claudia, praying for a miracle of healing for her neighbor who has cancer. And also encouragement for his family. An Ask God card about the victims of the Las Vegas shooting that happened this last week, for comfort for their loved ones, for a full and quick recovery for those who are injured, and for wisdom and guidance for the politicians and police that have to deal with these situations. Another one for vocations, that God would call workers to his field and that they would listen and trust. And for those from Damascus Road that are in Bible schools, we have Juliet who's in one, Renee who's in one, and Irene who's in one, and those from Damascus Road who are on mission. So to be praying for those that we've helped to send out. Ben put in one to ask to heal my mom of her pancreatic cancer and to ease her pain, and also to help me find work or a way to stay in Maastricht. That's something that's not new for various people in our church of, okay, how do we stay in this country having to do with visa issues? Another one is, I want God to bless me with a 2-bedroom house for me and for my son. Another one asks, please pray for the drum worship team who have undergone a lot of spiritual attack this week. And then Natalie put him on and said, my sister-in-law is 8 months pregnant, but her baby is not laying well to have a natural birth. So please pray that her baby will turn so that she won't need a C-section.
Luke chapter 21, 5-9. Some people were talking about the temple, how it was decorated with beautiful stones and ornaments dedicated to God. Jesus said, as for the things you are admiring, the time is coming when not even one stone will be left upon another. All will be demolished. They asked him, Teacher, when will these things happen? What sign will show that these things are about to happen? Jesus said, watch out that you aren't deceived. Many will come in my name saying, I am the one, and it's time. Don't follow them. When you hear of wars and rebellions, don't be alarmed. These things must happen first, but the end won't happen immediately. Take care that your hearts aren't dulled by drinking parties, drunkenness, and the anxieties of day-to-day life. Don't let that day fall upon you unexpectedly, like a trap. It will come upon everyone who lives on the face of the whole earth. Stay alert at all times, praying that you are strong enough to escape everything that's about to happen and to stand before the human one. The word of the Lord.
I mentioned earlier that we have an artist in our midst and some of her process of learning to be an artist. When I was young, I really didn't like art. That was not my best class. I'm not a very good artist. And then when I was in university, I had to take an art history class, and that actually made me more interested in art. I'm still not any good at drawing myself, but it gave me more of the background. I understood a little more of the richness of what some of the meanings were of these things, or what was supposed to be being shown. And I love getting to walk into cathedrals and to look inside of them and to see the art, and especially because of how much I love the Bible and love reading the Bible, and when it's in different languages, it's fun to figure out what Bible story are they trying to tell here. And to try to pick out which parts of the stories they have or how they show that. And it's interesting to me, when you walk inside of a cathedral, what they're trying to say. In some ways, their immensity, they intended to show just the immensity of God, how big He is. If you go into the cathedral in Barcelona, which is beautiful, it's meant to mimic nature. So you get, the columns are supposed to remind you of trees, and you have a lot of natural light that's supposed to be coming in. And there's all of these different sorts of things that they try to get across with the architecture of what they made. Now when Jesus was sitting at the temple, and people were pointing at him, oh, look at this wonderful architecture. Instead of thinking about the immensity of God or about nature, he just starts thinking about the end of the world. Oh, I look at that. I think of earthquakes and famines and swords. Something that's important for us to do when we're together is to watch for the end and to remember the end. And I don't mean that in this post-apocalyptic way where we don't do anything, but Jesus says, be careful, keep watch out, don't let your hearts be dulled by kind of fooling around, carousing, or by drunkenness, and by the worries of this life. So don't let that day catch you unaware like a trap. Sometimes it's so easy for us to get into our day by day, either the worries of life that make us stress out, or the ways that we try to entertain ourselves and escape life by carousing or by drunkenness. And Jesus is saying, don't go for either of those. Don't get caught unaware. Remember that there will be an end to this. So what's important today? We know that Jesus will come back again. He has promised that, and we believe that there will be a day where the one that we follow, the one that we're trying to be like, will show up in glory and in brilliance, and we'll be taken into that glory and get to see his glory, and we'll be changed more and more into his likeness. We will get to be with him, and that will be a wonderful, glorious day for those that have been keeping watch, for those that have been doing what he gave us to do. So I hope today, as we're together, that you don't get stuck on the stresses or the worries of life, nor do you get stuck on, oh, what's the fun thing I'm going to do later today, but that you take the moment to remember our life now in the light of eternity, our life now in the light of what's going to be important later. So for your action step on this, I would like us to take just 1 minute of silence, and for you to think, if today was your last day, what is important for you to do today? It can be easy for us to get stuck up in, well, we go to church and we do our sort of liturgy, we get through our thing, and then I go about the rest of my business. But what is really important for you to do today? So let's take that 1 minute, and then after that, Becky will come up and give the announcements. We'll finish our service, but take 1 minute now to consider.
Anyone who's new and is not yet on the City, you can sign up for your free account on the City, which is our church communication tool. There's a website and also an app, and that'll let you know what events are coming up and help you get in touch with people in the church. So make sure to sign up for your free account on the City. As soon as we wrap up here, parents, you can go pick up your children, and that's an important reminder for me because I love to stand around and talk with people and forget that my kids, which make up like at least a third of the kids in the nursery, need to be picked up, so I have to remember to go get them also. There is a prayer meeting after church today in here, so if you want to actually jump in and help clean up and put away all the sound equipment, that would help. The prayer meeting can then start sooner, so stay and pray if you'd like to do that. The Bible study groups have just started this week. Jessica still has books in the back by the Community Bible Study banner, so you can still get your books if you don't have one yet. They're €12 each. And if you are not yet in a group, I know there's a lot of you who are not yet in groups. There's still space for you in groups. If you'd like to test out one of our Bible study groups, no commitment, but if you just want to see what it's like, you can stay here this afternoon. Jessica and I will be leading our group in the kids' room starting at 2 o'clock. So if you want to stay and jump into our group, we'll go from 2 to 3:30. You can join us and see if it's something that you want to continue either in our group Sunday afternoon or in one of the other groups during the week, and we can connect you with a group that's close to where you live, both in Dutch or in English. The Drum Fellowship Night at 7:30 this Wednesday, this week, is a focus on mental health. So we're going to be having people share testimonies of how God has brought spiritual comfort and healing through mental illness. And we'll be talking about the intersection of mental illness and faith. And we'll also be hearing from some mental health professionals on how to get help. So if that's a topic that you're interested in, even if you're not a student, you can come to that. The A21 March for Freedom in Maastricht is this Saturday, and you can sign up for that and participate as well. And if you are not able to participate but you want to donate to the cause, let me know, because I can point out several people in the church who are marching, and you can donate to sponsor them. Thanks so much for worshiping God and participating in this interactive church experience with us today. I like that we didn't just sit here and church is sort of thrown at us, but that we got to be church together today. So I'm glad that each one of you was here. Grace, mercy, and peace, which come from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, continue to be with us who actively live in truth and love. Have the greatest Sunday afternoon of your lives.